In their heads, as I said recently, Africa belongs to them. Our lands belong to them. The riches of Africa are for them. They cannot conceive that Africans can emancipate themselves, get their heads out of the water, and therefore want to keep their heads. And for that, they have put a cliché in their heads. The African is easy to manipulate. He is only emotion. They will always find an African to fight against his brother.
Hello black brothers and sisters, I hope you're all doing fine from wherever you're watching me from. Now, I'm sharing this video of Ibrahim Traore, the president of Burkina Faso, a well-known Pan-Africanist who is going around preaching the gospel of unity amongst black people. Now, in this video, he talks about the oppression black people have been facing in the US, in the UK, in Europe, and in Africa by the Western countries. Now, he says the division that exists between black people has been the enemy number one for the development and prosperity of black people. So let's watch this video, then have a quick discussion at the end of it. Thank you so much.
And it has always been like that. Through communication, they have led you to hate your own skin color. In our cultures and in many cultures in Burkina Faso, mourning is symbolized by the color blue. When a woman loses her husband, she wears blue clothes to mourn for a while. It is they who came to tell you that black symbolizes mourning, the devil, mediocrity, all that is bad. And unfortunately, we have swallowed it so much that when we are in mourning, we also wear black. We have to wake up. We have to wake up because this is the cliché that they have in their heads. They are the empire of good. Others are the empire of evil. And we are the empire of slaves. This is how imperialists see the world. You have to understand that. And here I am going to make a big deal at the place of some intellectuals who continue to want to preach for the imperialists. Do they ignore this part of history? I am not inventing anything. It has been declassified. You will find everything I said in the libraries or everywhere on the search engines. Have these intellectuals not read this? Do they not know the history of this world? Maybe it is by dishonesty or a few dollars that leads them to always preach for the imperialists. They have always preached to raise awareness of our people, our popular masses, so that they understand where they come from and how they are seen by the imperialists. Let's take the history of a few wars. You have followed the Iraq War, a big lie that has been invented, supposedly of possession of weapons of mass destruction. Some senators in the United States did everything to get evidence. They did not get it. Remember that several people resigned from the CIA after this war. Evidence has been invented everywhere. Occidental secret services helped them to fabricate evidence. We remember that Nigeria was accused of setting up a false convention to sell uranium to Iraq. It is the same process that they used to say that Nigeria was selling uranium to Iran. They have already seen it. They have pretexted this and have not had evidence. Even the United Nations found no tangible evidence of the presence of weapons of mass destruction. But they had their objective to destroy Iraq. They destroyed Iraq. They created the Islamic State to come and fight it. Understand the game. It only lasted too long. We have to wake up and understand all this so that we become aware of our situation and fight for our future.
Toutes ces guerres ont été inventées passant par l'Irak.
All these wars have been invented through Iraq, Syria, Libya, and the Middle East for their own benefit because no one can equal them.
C'est ce que nous vivons aujourd'hui dans le Sahel aussi à travers le terrorisme.
This is what we live in the Sahel through the terrorism that they have imposed because they will always find black people who will get excited and take up arms against their black brothers.
C'est ce que nous vivons. Et n'ont jamais quitté ce modèle. Malheureusement,
This is what we live and never leave this model. This is why they fight against their brothers.
très moins cher à l'impérialiste et ils se mettent à.
I wanted to make this little history
Je voulais faire ce petit historique du monde pour que
so that you understand how imperialism sees our world.
ça se résume en ce petit triangle.
It is summarized in this little triangle.
Dans cette deuxième phase, je dois vous expliquer pourquoi nous
In
devons
this second phase, I have to explain why we have to
une
fight.
petite histoire.
A little
En
story.
2015, à Tombouctou. Lorsque nous avons rencontré
In 2015, in Tombouctou, when we met, I was in charge of the airport platform.
dans les patrouilles, nous avons rencontré des individus qui rôdaient autour.
In the patrol, we met individuals who were walking around. One of these individuals was a Manchurian.
C'était dangereux.
I made him understand that it was dangerous to walk around the base because they could be killed.
Il m'a dit qu'il voulait se faire tuer, il voulait mourir.
He told me that he wanted to be killed. He wanted to die.
Certains
I tried to understand their story.
mais ils cherchaient à mourir à cause du terrorisme. Ils nous ont expliqué que lorsque les
Why did the terrorists come to Tombouctou?
Le manchot qui m'expliquait ça,
One, the Manchurian who explained this to
les
me.
terroristes se sont pointés à son domicile.
One evening,
On
the
voulait
terrorists came to his
violer
house.
sa femme devant lui. Il s'est opposé.
They wanted to rape his wife in front of him.
Le lendemain, on est venu le pêcher à la maison. La menace
He opposed it. They left.
accusé de vol. On a tranché sa main.
The next day, we came to take him home. We took him to the public square. We accused him of theft. We cut his hand. We beat him. He left home.
La femme.
His 16-year-old son took care of his hand.
Ils ont continué à violer sa femme pendant des jours.
They came back, they raped his wife, and took his son
Ils ont
away.
amené son fils.
They continued to rape his wife for days until the woman committed suicide.
Voilà pourquoi il marche autour les jours que
They took his son away. He never found him again. He preferred to die. This is why he walks around with a gun pointed at him. It will please him.
ils ont été enlevés de chez eux parce qu'ils refusaient que les terroristes touchent à leurs femmes ou à
Others experienced the same
Le
fate.
lendemain, on
They
vient
were
de
taken away from their homes because they refused that the terrorists touch their women or daughters.
Après, ils allaient faire leur sale besoin. Beaucoup de familles ont été détruites ainsi.
The next day, we came to take them away. We took them to the public square. We beat them to death. After that, they went to do their dirty business. Many families were destroyed. These are criminals who are armed and who sow desolation in our countries. They do it in the name of no religion. Unfortunately, here in Burkina Faso, some villages have been compromised by these individuals.
Je parle en connaissance de cause. En 2022 à côté,
I speak as a cause.
mon unité dans un village parce qu'ils ne voulaient pas que nous restions.
In 2022, I was searched with my unit in a village because they did not want us to stay there because they had a good agreement with the
Plusieurs
terrorists.
autres unités sont témoins.
Those who listen to me know what we are talking about. Several other units are witnesses. Some villages have categorically that the FDS make noise because they have a good relationship with the terrorists.
Avec ces criminels, parce que c'est eux qui décident du jour où le pacte se rompt.
We made them understand that there is no possible alliance with these criminals because they decide to end the pact. When the pact was broken, they came back to the social networks to call for help. We went there. But it is to say that no matter what they come to tell you, no matter the possible flattery, no matter the pact you sign with them, the day they decide to end the pact, they will come to kill and end the pact. There is no possible alliance with the terrorists. There is no possible alliance with these criminals.
Avec ces criminels, ils sont à combattre. Un point, c'est tout. Aujourd'hui, nous
There is no possible alliance today. We see a phenomenon, unfortunately, in our cities.
À passer de cour en cour.
Some people like to go from one court to another to make their wives of certain FDS and certain VDP understand that the families of certain people who fell for the country had a peaceful solution with the terrorists.
Solution pacifique avec les terroristes, c'est nous qui avons voulu faire la guerre. Voilà pourquoi tout ça se passe.
We wanted to wage war, and that is why all this is happening.
Voyant tout ce qui se passe, comprenant le monde, peuvent avoir des...
How can human beings, seeing all that is happening, understanding the world, have such words?
Soit nous les combattons ou ils nous combattent. C'est tout.
Do not be mistaken. Either we fight them or they fight us. That's all.
Les gens se cachent. Ces gens se cachent soi-disant derrière un semblant de dialogue.
These people are hiding behind a semblance of dialogue or negotiation.
Ils vont vous ramener à traîner dans la boue. C'est ça l'objectif de
They are going to drag you into the mud. That is the goal of imperialism, that the plague lasts, that it lasts in time, that your states are not structured, and that we continue to take advantage of your riches. The more it lasts, the more it arranges them. And unfortunately, these individuals who go from course to course play the game of the imperialists. If they lie to me, let them stop now. Because they will fight themselves. We have no choice but to fight, and we have opted for combat, and that is where we will be free, that we will be truly independent. To do this, we have taken care of diagnosing the deep problem of Burkina Faso. I admit that the problem is real and deep. Evil is there. We have diagnosed it, and we are discovering the system day by day. Many knots have been undone, but knots remain to be undone, because every day that God does, we discover certain practices. I can understand. For several decades, this system has been installed. It has become like a gene in our DNA. But we have to remove this gene from our DNA and be able to build a new Burkina Faso. That is why in the third phase of my speech, I am going to give guidelines in certain key areas. We will not give any details on our program, if we can put it that way. Because when the program is known in detail, they will anticipate, they will put obstacles in our way and prevent us from reaching our goals. But we can therefore sum up in a few words.
Parlant donc du domaine de la défense et de la sécurité, comme vous le constatez, nous avons opté pour...
Speaking of the field of defense and security, as you can see, we have opted for combat. And for that, we have almost doubled the number of troops in our armed forces.
Je pense que dernièrement, des recrutements ont été lancés côté officiers et sous-officiers, et bientôt, dans quelques jours, le recrutement...
We continue to recruit, and I think that recently recruitment has been launched on the side of officers and non-officers. And soon, in a few days, recruitment for at least 10,000 soldiers should be launched. We will continue to strengthen our troops in order to face the fact that wherever you are, despite the recruitment that has been done, there is always a need for soldiers. Everywhere in Burkina Faso, some villages continue to want military presence. So there is a need to continue to recruit and equip. And I can assure you that we are on this launch. Since January 2023, we have been able to launch a program of equipment. It's true, the world is crazy. There is war everywhere. No nation takes its equipment and sells it. We make it for you. What made these equipment last for almost 18 months? But the first one started to come, as you have seen the last time, and the equipment will continue to come. Because we want the level of our army to reach a level never equaled in the sub-region. This equipment program will continue, and it's you, the actors of this program. Because since we fought, I can tell you these so-called friends of Burkina who have been there for a long time, who suck our wealth, even a single cartridge of Kalashnikov we have not received from anyone to make our fight. It's you who pay, and we will continue to work with our people to be able to lead this fight. We have partners who have accepted to sell us equipment and who have even proposed to be able to deliver us strategic equipment and that we can pay in time. We thank them for this gesture. And we also say thank you to the people who understood the meaning of the fight, that we have to fight. If we don't fight, they will come looking for us at home, like in a chicken coop or in a sheepfold. Every morning they will choose who they want to go and execute on the public square to scare others, to go and cut hands or feet on the public square to scare others. This is their tactic. We are going to fight, and we will give ourselves the means to get there. If it happens tomorrow that we are stuck in a certain spear, we will still come to the people and ask for even more sacrifices to be able to reach the goal. Because despite your contributions, I told you earlier, some powers have refused to sell us equipment. They have blocked the equipment that we have bought in some countries because they have the license of some components. And these powers exploit minerals in Burkina Faso. I say it here loudly and solemnly. It will stop. We are going to withdraw exploitation permits. We will not allow this. We will not allow this. You cannot exploit our resources and refuse to sell us equipment, to block our equipment. We are not going to accept this. We are going to withdraw our exploitation permits, and we are going to exploit them ourselves. We are going to withdraw our exploitation permits, and we are going to exploit them ourselves. And we are going to overcome this terrorism here in Burkina Faso and even in the EU. During a long period of time, we have spent time keeping an eye on a number of actors, but we have understood that the phenomenon is so profound. Corruption, bad governance in various administrations, lack of ethics persist. Some bodies have been put in place in the context of the fight against corruption, and recently some arrests have been made in the context of denunciations. The last act will be made before the end of this month. It is an organ that will have to sit in all ministries to self-seize certain dysfunctions, acts of corruption, and be able to act. And these organs will be ready, because we have a lot of big workers also in the administration, but they are often put in the shadows, because for a long time, they are the most corrupt, the most dishonest, who have been put in the light. It is they who benefit from all the advantages. And so I tell the workers to pay attention to these individuals who are losing their privileges. Because they will continue to manipulate you, to intoxicate you, and to send you into bad patches. Pay close attention to these individuals who are losing their privileges, because we will not allow a so-called elite that had been programmed to take up all the rights in our different administrations. The last organ will be put in place before the end of this month, and real work will begin. You will hear a little bit everywhere at the end of this that we do not respect certain texts. We do not respect certain laws. But there are no laws or texts that stand in the struggle when it is for the interest of the country. Let them stand up and say we will go in this direction. We have adopted a line of conduct. We are making a diagnosis, verifying the presence and seeing the needs.
Nous avons donc dans le processus de
It is not excluded that during the year some contests are launched to increase the number of employees in certain places.
vérifier les présences et de voir les besoins.
Of course, there was a wave of contests that were launched, but in all areas they are making the point that if there is a need, we will continue to recruit to be at an acceptable level and to be able to operate the different organs of the country for the happiness of the masses.
S'il y a besoin, je dis bien s'il y a besoin, nous continuerons encore de recruter.
In the field of diplomacy, we have opted for a common diplomacy in the AES.
Les différents organes donc du pays pour le bonheur donc des masses populaires.
All decisions regarding partners, whether African or foreign, will be taken unanimously within the
Nous avons
AES.
opté pour une diplomatie commune dans l'AES.
But we have also opted for a diplomacy of truth. We do not intend to put ourselves in certain logics, to lie, or to cover reality.
Mais nous avons aussi
Saying that it is diplomacy, it is false. It is not diplomacy.
nous ne comptons pas nous mettre dans certaines logiques.
I can tell you that what you see as a superstructure when people come to the audience and come out to speak is only a visible part of the iceberg.
Ce n'est pas là la diplomatie.
What happened inside, in the windows, has nothing to do with
C'est
diplomacy.
ce que vous voyez en superstructure lorsque les gens viennent en audience et sortent.
We are therefore inscribed in this logic to say things clearly to the people. Some will criticize us, others will even say that a head of state should not speak like that.
Rien à voir avec la
A head of state should not do that. But we tell them that maybe these people who criticize in this way when we speak the truth.
dans cette logique de dire clairement les choses au peuple. Certains vont nous critiquer.
Maybe they have a school where they have learned how to be a head of state, how a head of state should be. Otherwise, I have not yet seen the school. Why do we necessarily have to do like others? We want to create our model, our identity. I think that Burkina Faso, by definition, is the whole man.
Peut-être que ces gens
We want the
critiquent de
truth.
cette façon lorsque nous disons la vérité.
And when the truth comes out, even if we have made a mistake, we must have the courage to come and tell you on which side we have made a mistake.
Sinon, je n'ai pas encore vu cette école.
We ask for forgiveness. If you forgive us, you forgive us. We no longer want to be inscribed in this false diplomacy.
Comme les autres. Nous voulons créer notre modèle, notre identité. Et je pense que le Burkinabé.
In an interview, when I spoke to you about the Ivorian regime, some Burkinabés climbed on their horses and
Même
criticized.
si nous avons fauté, il faut que nous ayons le courage de venir vous dire sur tel côté nous avons fauté, nous demandons.
I say it,
Si vous nous
I
pardonnez,
insist, and I persist. We have nothing against the Ivorian people, but we have something with those who rule the Ivory Coast. We say it, and we repeat it again.
nous inscrire
Let me tell you something.
diplomatie mensongère.
Let me tell you
Nous
something.
avons, dans
In
le
Abidjan,
pays,
there is a center of operations to destabilize our country. No one can deny it, and we will prove it to you in the coming days.
Je le dis, j'insiste et je persiste.
We will show you physical evidence. You will understand what we are talking
Nous
about.
avons quelque chose avec ceux qui dirigent la Côte d'Ivoire.
No one will come and tell us that in Benin, there is no French base directed against us. We have the evidence in our hands. Two important bases. No one can deny it, and I challenge it. We have nothing against the Benin people. We have a problem with the policy of the Benin leaders.
Permettez-moi de vous dire quelque chose.
We say it again. We say it again.
Il y a bel et bien
In this diplomacy, we have decided to tell the truth. There are two bases, one to Kandy and the other to Porga, or I don't know which locality. Tracks have been redeveloped to more than 3,000 meters long.
Vous allez comprendre de quoi nous parlons.
Planes land. People train and train terrorists there. We have audio recordings of French agents in Benin who play the center of terrorist operations. They carry out operations with them. They help them heal. They do everything there. We have all the details about them. And you don't want us to tell our people? We will say it. If you don't want it, if they don't want it, let them stop behaving like this. It's simple.
Avec la politique des dirigeants béninois.
We have not forced anyone to take their independence. If you decide to stay in your situation, but don't take your countries to make bases there, because it is your populations who will suffer afterwards, and it is not a good policy.
Porga ou je sais pas quelle localité. Des pistes ont été
We say it by experience, and I always repeat it. Burkina Faso has been a base to destabilize some countries, and it is not good.
Nous avons
Burkina Faso was a base for
enregistrement
terrorists here.
d'agents français au Bénin là-bas qui se jouent les
This is the price we pay to prevent the people of this country, who I speak of, to speak to their leaders and to stop this policy because it doesn't suit them at all.
Nous avons tous les détails sur eux.
To come in the field of communication and culture, we have launched several initiatives. During the year 2024, you celebrated with us the month of local consumption.
S'ils ne le veulent pas, qu'ils arrêtent de se
We had the
comporter
traditional days, the month of heritage. Many activities have been carried out. We will continue to bring back our culture because this is where we find our identity.
Si vous décidez de rester dans votre situation,
We will continue actions in this direction to enhance our culture, to enhance our customs, and to enhance the life of Burkina Faso.
c'est pas une bonne politique.
And we wish that everyone is an actor of the emergence of Burkina Faso through his way of communicating. Because everything is also in communication.
Pour déstabiliser certains pays. Et ce n'est pas bien. Le Burkina était une base arrière.
You have recently followed the communication war that was waged against us, and it continues. It will not stop. And I wish that everyone who is in communication can be professional.
Et qu'ils arrêtent cette politique parce que ça ne les arrange pas du tout.
When we want to make a communication act, we ask ourselves if it is for the country or against the country before making the act. No matter, you may not love us, my person, you may not love me, but you must love your country.
Et culture, nous avons lancé plusieurs initiatives. Au cours de l'année 2024,
By hurting me, you should not confuse the country. And so politics in the field of communication will have to go in this direction. And we will be forced to frame communication on all aspects. And it is this line of conduct that will be adopted.
donc notre culture.
We will not allow Burkinabés to communicate against Burkina Faso. We will always have to be aware. We must be able to raise awareness so that people understand why we have to fight on all fronts.
Now, to the few of you who do not know Ibrahim Traore, now, this is the president of Burkina Faso, and he has been doing great things in his own country. Now, he has gone viral for his style of leadership and how he has approached the Western countries. In that, we've seen the Western countries coming out using their own mainstream medias to actually attack him, to say how much he's a dictator. And some of the black people in the diaspora are actually buying the idea of calling him a dictator just because he's not buying the Western policies. He's not killing any of his citizens. He's protecting his citizens from the oppression by the Western countries. Now, we, the black people, are suffering from what we call Stockholm syndrome, that we are now tending to love the oppressor. We now even listen to the oppressor, whatever the oppressor is saying about our own people on the continent of Africa. Now, black brothers and sisters, this is the time we should come out and unite. I always say that we should have the unity of purpose, that we just do not unite anyhow. Let's unite with the purpose of actually making Africa great again. Let me tell you some things that some of the people outside Africa, or the black people in Africa, do not know. That African continent has never been independent. That the policies we use in most countries, let me say in almost all countries in Africa, are not African, because these are policies that we import. These are their own policies. This is why Africa is falling apart. This is why, and this is how they have managed to loot everything in our own continent in Africa. This is why we are seeing so many crises in Africa. This is why when Ibrahim Traore comes out to talk about the atrocities that are facing black people in their own continent and outside the continent of Africa, they call him a dictator. They will call him names because they are fighting him by trying to turn him against his own people in Africa and around the world. Now, see the crisis which is happening in DRC Congo. Now, the rebel groups are being sponsored and they are killing so many innocent people. So many innocent mothers and children are losing lives in DRC Congo just because someone somewhere do not want a president in that country to be. They want to install another puppet because this puppet is failing them. It is the main problem we have in Africa right now. We are still suffering from the colonial legacy that we were left with, that we still use their language, that we still teach their history in our own schools, that we still eat their foods, that we import their products to Africa, and so many other things, that we still use the dollar in Africa when we can actually unite, have a common currency that can run the whole of Africa, that can actually be used to trade among African countries. This is whatever Muammar Gaddafi was talking about, and they called him names. They called him a dictator. They called him a rapist. They called him every name that a human being does not deserve. And everyone believed them. They did away with him. And so many other leaders who stood to say the truth. Now, take for example, a leader like Malcolm X, who was the leader of Muslim, the Islamic State. Now, Malcolm X really talked the truth. And he used to say in most of his interviews that black people will one day unite. They will see the light. That black people will one day speak same language, will actually do things with unity. And when this day comes, the Western powers will fall apart. I feel like this is the right time. Ibrahim Traore has been preaching this, that black people, wake up. Let's speak our own minds. Let's do our own things in our own black countries. Why should our own president be summoned by Emmanuel Macron of France? Who is he? Was he elected in Africa? Why should our own president be summoned by Putin of Russia? However much they might tend to respect Putin or Emmanuel Macron or the president of the US, we are still a sovereign society. We are still a sovereign continent. Why did we have independence if at all the independence of our own countries do not matter at all? Why should someone go to the US, sign some rogue policies, sign some documents that he or she does not understand, then come back to his own country, then try to force some bad policies to his people? Why should someone be so desperate to bring someone like Bill Gates to Africa, to bring things like GMO to Africa? It is because of their selfish interest, and it is because they fear for their own lives, because if they say no, they'll be eliminated and gotten rid of. This is why people like the great Magufuli of Tanzania, when he started talking the truth, he's no more. But this is happening because the African continent and the black people as a race are not united. The moment we will sit down, African diasporians, black diasporians, unite with the people who are in this continent at the moment. Unite whenever you are and wherever you are. Do not let your brother or sister face oppression while you are seeing. And when that happens, the supreme Western powers will fall apart. I'll tell you something. When Babylons were actually having that so much powers, that they thought if speaking to God through prayers was such a hard thing, so they started planning, because they had so much unity. They started planning on how they could reach God. So they started building a tower, and this tower went so much into the clouds. The tower was so tall. I think that should be the tallest building ever existed on Mother Earth. By their unity, they could do so much. The Tower of Babel did fall. These Western countries are able to recolonize us because we are divided, and they have actually used the divide and rule and succeeded with that in Africa. That's why the Sahel, when I'm talking about the Sahel, I'm talking about countries like Cameroon. I'm talking to countries like Burkina Faso, Ghana. I'm talking about countries like Mali. Exclude Nigeria because it is unstable with its policies because of the president it has had. When we talk about the countries of the Sahel, which belong to the AES, they're actually uniting to form a one very compatible community in which they want to talk the same language, they want to use the same currency, they want to do trading very easily. That you can move from Burkina Faso, go to Ghana, then go back to Cameroon, then come back to Mali without without actually being asked for so many passports. What has happened in Africa that we have 55 countries with the 55 passports? When you go to a region like the European Union, they have one currency, which is the euro. They use the euro. You can go to you can move from Belgium to France and use the euro. You don't have to carry the dollar. You can move from UK to Spain using the euro and trade using the euro. You just have to have one passport that can take you through all these 24, 32 countries around Europe. What happened to Africa? What really happened? Because they came, put boundaries between our own people so that you people can't cross. This is a Tanzanian, this is a Kenyan. This person comes from Zimbabwe, this person comes from South Africa. You can't go to the other side because they feel like you don't belong to them. You are not the same as them. But you people have the same color. But you people came from the same ancestor. Before these people came to Africa, we didn't have all these countries. The only country that existed before the European powers came to Africa were not more than three, which is Egypt, Ethiopia, and some other, I don't know where it comes from. So this is the time we should unite. Let's listen to Ibrahim Traore. Let's listen to people like Pilo Lumumba, and Africa will be great. It is time we black people rise up again. American blacks, black Americans, African Americans, British uh, British blacks. So this is the time. From the Caribbean, Jamaica, going back to Peru, Antigua, to Brazil. This is the time we should unite as black people, speak one language, speak the truth to power, and we will defeat the enemy. The enemy is the oppressor. In that our black brothers were taken from this continent, made slaves, they built that country. But when matters of national importance are being discussed, they have never called black people. So this is the time we should reclaim our own powers. We should reclaim our own unity that we had lost and come back to be strong once more. Thank you so much for having taken your time to watch this video. I appreciate so much.